ונעשה ונצליח, שיעור תורה, ברוכים הבאים. So, Baruch Hashem, we have extraordinary news, fantastic news for anybody that hasn't heard yet. Baruch Hashem, Rudy Rockman and the rest of the guys were freed. Baruch Hashem, were freed, were released from the hellhole of the prison in Nigeria. And as we speak, they're on their way. They're on a flight back to Eretz Israel, which Baruch Hashem is exactly as we thought was ideal. There's really no reason for them to be there, and Baruch Hashem, they're on their way home. So this Baruch Hashem was a very, very big siyata d'ishmaya, and we want to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu properly. So we're gonna read Mizmor LeTodah. Anytime something major, something good happens, it doesn't necessarily need to be something major for everybody. It could be major for you. It's good to read, to show to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we're appreciative. It's good to start off by saying a Mizmor LeTodah. Now, even though I already did this earlier today, we'll do it together, Be'ezrat Hashem, it's the Psalm 100. Mizmor LeTodah, ariu LaAdonai kol haaretz, ivdu et Adonai besimcha. בואו לפניו ברננה, דעו כי אדוני הוא אלוהים, הוא עשנו ולא אנחנו, עמו וצאן מרעיתו, בואו שעריו בתודה, חצר אותה בתהילה, הודו לו ברכו שמו, כי טוב אדוני לעולם חסדו, והדור ודור אמונתו. הקדוש ברוך הוא is great, extraordinary, amazing. There's simply not enough words in all of the vocabularies in the universe to describe how amazing HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, because this whole situation with Rudy and the team over there could have been much, much worse than it was. Of course, even what happened was definitely a extraordinary kaparat avonot, but at the same token, Baruch Hashem, that it's over and it's behind them, and Be'ezrat Hashem, they will go on to a life full of Torah and Maasim Tovim, and Be'ezrat Hashem do a lot of good in the Jewish world, Be'ezrat Hashem. And of course, may we all do complete Teshuva, and not only thank Hashem properly for today, but thank Hashem properly for the rest of our lives. And really, this is one of the things that is discussed in this week's parasha. As I always tell you guys, everything you ever want to get an answer for that's happened to you in your life, is you could always find it in the weekly parasha. You know, last week we had that wicked, cursed show, Unorthodox, released from the seventh chamber of Gehenom into the Jewish world and create confusion, to create turmoil for those among us that are very weak already and are still watching television and movies and Hollywood, and are constantly setting our eyes on the grass that doesn't belong to us, the field that doesn't belong to us, and the life that doesn't belong to us, Am Yisrael. But nonetheless, that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does when we look out of curiosity. At some point, this curiosity is going to create damage. And of course, all of those Reshaim that cause the damage, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will also give them their own punishment. As it says in the Gemara, Megalgelim zchut al yedei zakai vechova al yedei chayav. That in the Bet Din of Shamayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives the good, the blessings to those that have merit, and the curses, the problems, the job of being the stick that hits the Jewish people to those that have sins on their hands. So you see that those people that have sins usually cause damage to society, and even if that society is their own dearest and most beloved people in their own life. That's in essence, that's the merit they earned for themselves. They want to cause damage to Am Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make that also cause damage for their own family. And in essence, that's what's going to happen with these people. And we saw it in last week's parasha, where it says at the end of Parashat Vayitchanan, Meshalem el sonav el panav la'avido. HaKadosh Baruch Hu pays cash to the face of his haters to destroy them. He pays them to their face, and he will not delay the payment. So part of the payment is to give them money that will destroy them. Part of the payment will give them fame and fortune to destroy them. Part of the payment will give them all types of other things that they don't want to destroy them. And why? Because they are desecrating the Torah, and especially on a public level. It's not like you could say these people are ignoramuses, that they were born in some kibbutz and they never learned anything. This is a person that lived in a Jewish community their whole life and decided to make the Jewish community and their Torah the number one enemy. And of course, the only way to deal with such things is with aggression and with 100% uncensored truth, and not to tiptoe around it and pretend like it's not so bad or anything like that. Because the reality is that if these people have an ounce of merit left in them, perhaps that's being covered by the klipa of sins that they have, then maybe the strong rebuke will break that klipa shell that they have, and they'll wake up from their slumber. But at the same token, if a person really understands what's happening here, is that if a person wants to be a secular, they don't want to follow the Torah and mitzvot, they tried it, they don't like it, they never connected to it, whatever the case may be, whatever craziness is in somebody's head that they decide that they have a better way than God's way, fine. If they want to do it, we're sad, but there's not much that we can do. You can't force anyone to be religious. Everybody, to each their own. They're going to do whatever they want. You obviously will try to help them. You'll pray for them. You'll even try to encourage them to come back. But there's not much else that you can do. If somebody wants to go and desecrate the Torah, eat shrimp and pig and all types of bugs from the ocean and from the land, and be promiscuous and become the fire hydrant for the community and all types of other filthy, disgusting things, they want to do it to themselves. There's not much that you can do. But when they decide that not only do they want to become secular, but they want to become the enemy of the Jewish people, they want to become the enemy of the Torah, they want to become the enemy of Hashem by constantly publicizing their secularism, their war against the Torah, their hatred of the Torah, their hatred of the religious Jewish people, their hatred of Hashem. When a person does such a thing like that, there's nothing else to do but to be even more aggressive towards them with words, of course, and not with physical. We don't have the Sanhedrin that allows us to kill anybody or even hit anybody. But nonetheless, we have to be as aggressive as possible against those people, because that's what the Torah tells us to do. We cannot just sit there and quietly hoping for the best while they're declaring war and desecrating Hashem's name. As the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin says, "B'makom sheyesh chilul Hashem en kavod larav." In a place that there's desecration of Hashem, there isn't even consideration of honoring rabbis. Meaning, even if there was a rabbi that was desecrating Hashem's name, you can't even take that into account. You can't even take the honor of the rabbi into account when it comes to the honor of Hashem. So when somebody decides to be secular, that's one thing. And even itself, it's a form of chilul Hashem, of desecrating Hashem's name. But when somebody decides to go on TV and publicly and on a regular basis desecrate Hashem's name, that's a war against Hashem, and that's a war that we all have an obligation to fight. We all have an obligation to fight in our own different ways. Some can fight by simply not watching. Some can fight by discouraging other people not to watch. Some people can fight by doing other things like talking bad about it and simply explaining to people how much of a danger it is, and so on and so forth. Everybody has their own role. And that was in essence in last week's parasha. And this week's parasha, Baruch Hashem, this parasha, Parashat Ekev, is full of extraordinary blessings and chidushim, and it's just full of amazing things. But also the situation that happened with Rudy and some of the other things that are happening in the world is also here. Because you see that in the beginning of the parasha, Kadosh Baruch Hu tells us, through Moshe Rabbeinu, ושמרתם ועשיתם אותם, ושמר אדוני אלוהיך לך את הברית ואת החסד אשר נשבע לאבותיך. That if we keep the mitzvot, we observe the mitzvot, we perform them, not keep them in a box, we actually perform these mitzvot, and Hashem will protect us, will safeguard us, because we safeguarded his covenant. And the kindness that he swore to our forefathers, to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, is what he's going to give us. And here it says, Ve'avecha, u'birachecha, u'birbecha, u'birach pri bitnecha, u'pri admatecha. And here he starts giving us a whole slew of blessings where it says, Hashem will love you. Hashem will love you if you do this. You keep Torah and mitzvot, Hashem will love you. It doesn't say Hashem will love you if you are desecrating Shabbat. It doesn't say Hashem will love you if you love all the idol worshippers. It doesn't say Hashem will love you if you decide that you want to run around immodest and like a zonah. It doesn't say that. It says that if you observe the covenant, you observe the Torah and the mitzvot, Hashem will love you, and He will bless you, and He will multiply you, and He will bless the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your land, meaning that not only will you have the ability to bring children to the world, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make this putrid seed turn into a beautiful, wonderful human being, but on top of it, He'll give you the money to pay for all of it. He'll bless your land, He'll bless your parnassah. And that's one of the things that really is the most shameful about this generation of murderers, where people are constantly murdering children by performing abortions and thinking that just because they don't see the actual baby walking around or crawling around, it's not murder. But unfortunately, it is 100% murder, and there's literally millions of babies murdered every single year all around the world. And it's funded in the United States. It's a big part of it is funded by the actual government itself. But really, the biggest funder of it is the ignorance of people. People simply don't understand what they're doing. We talked about it a little bit in the movie Tikkun HaBRIT that we made. For anyone that wants to watch, there's a whole section about abortions. But one of the things that a person, really that has their brain still in their head notices about people that are anti-Torah, anti-Jews, anti-Semitic, even if they're Jews themselves, is that they always talk about how religious people have a lot of kids. First of all, religious Jewish people are not the only people that have, or at least try to have, many kids. Quite frankly, all religious people throughout all of history tend to have many kids. Why? Because throughout all of history, with the exception of this lowly degenerate generation, throughout all of history, everybody understood that to have children is a blessing. To have children is a blessing. Hence the reason why Kadosh Baruch Hu says, He'll bless the fruit of your, He'll bless your womb. You'll have fruit come out of this womb, and it's not going to be just some sack. It's going to be something that produces children. And throughout all of history, people viewed children as a blessing. Only this lowly, pathetic generation views having children as a negative thing. And the reason why is because people are constantly worried about their own personal time. There was somebody that did a research recently that was shown to me, where it was asked, what are you most concerned about in regards to having more children? Personal time, concern for not having your personal time, or not having the money, or you simply don't want, or whatever the third reason was. And the number one reason why people were concerned about not having more kids is because of personal time. They don't want to have more kids because they want to go on vacation more often, and they want to go to work more often, and be slaves more often, and go drinking more often, and so on and so forth. And in reality, they continue to live such a life that literally is so self-centered, so selfish, that they don't even understand that something else exists in the world besides them. And they don't view having children as a blessing, unfortunately. And you see it many times that the number one attack, most common attack that people have on the Jewish people is that they have a lot of children. And we wish we could have as many children as the Muslims have, but nobody ever talks about that. Muslims have a lot more children than the Jewish people do, but nobody ever talks about that, because God forbid you talk about the the Muslims, you know that you're most likely going to have your head put into a refrigerator the next day, and the government is too scared to do anything about it. But the reality is, it's not as popular to be anti-Muslim. You're not going to have the same thing in many other places. Why? Because it's a lot more fun, a lot more popular to be anti-Semitic, even if those Semites, those Jews are your brothers and sisters. So the good Jew, the Jew that has their head on their shoulders, views having a child as a gift that will keep on giving. But unfortunately, when a person doesn't see it that way, that already shows that that person is not exactly thinking right. Not exactly thinking right. Now, of course, everything has to be done in with Dat Torah. The woman has to be healthy, both physically and psychologically, to be ready to bring more children into the world. We're not saying that a woman should simply be a person that doesn't have any free choice, like some people think. But again, this is one of the things that unfortunately has infiltrated the minds of the women in the world today, especially in these liberal types of women, where they want to have 2 dogs, maybe 1 kid, and perhaps a carriage for each one of them, but make sure to have enough money for a vacation and at least a few wigs. That's in essence what people view life as. They view life as a place to have fun. And as a person that's been around for a long time and met a lot of different people, especially older people, one of the most common things that I've heard throughout my life from people that are much older than I am, but I learned a lot from, is that one of the most common things that they regret in their life is not having more children. That's been one of the most common things. Some people decided that they wanted to remain single, and that was fun when they were 30 and 40 and 50, and they were going on different vacations. But as soon as they start going into their 50s and mid 50s in age, sometimes even earlier than that, they start becoming very, very miserable and bitter, and many times even suicidal, because they realize that single life, that thought of or illusion of being untouchable, and you could just keep going on more and more vacations and have a blast by yourself, is not exactly like they thought it was going to be. As they got older, it's not as much fun as they thought it was going to be, and they become very, very bitter because they can no longer do the things that they were able to do when they were younger. And unfortunately, many times people decide, oh, you know what? Okay, even though I'm 60 years old, maybe I'll still get married and have a kid. Listen, there's no prohibition from having a child at a later age, at 60 years old and so on. It's no problem. If you could have a kid, it's good. But at the same token, you should think about it where you say, listen, why should I wait till 60 that by the time my kid's going to get married, most likely you're either not going to be alive, or even if you are, you're probably in a wheelchair of some kind. A person needs to think about some of these things, but unfortunately most people don't think that far. People think about only the wall that's in front of them. They think about the wall that's in front of them and not necessarily things that are beyond that. It's something that a person needs to take into account. Anyway, the parasha continues where Kadosh Baruch Hu then tells us, "Velo ta'avod et Elohem ki mokesh ulach," that one of the biggest traps that we have in the world from the time of creation until today is the issues of idolatry. Idolatry is not just a statue or a false god, a Yeshua Notzri, a Jesus of Nazareth, or a Buddha, or anything like that, but rather idolatry is also, aside from that, is also a wrong ideology, an ideology where materialism becomes your priority in life, or some type of physical issues, women, men, attention, pride, money, all these different things are different forms of idolatry. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us outright here that all of these are traps. All of these are traps of the Satan. If you read enough Torah, you'll know that these are traps before you fall into them. If you ignore the Torah, you unfortunately only find out that they're traps after you're already inside them. Now, then the Kadosh Baruch Hu continues to warn us about all types of idolatry. The only mitzvah to fulfill with the idolatry is to tisrefun ba'esh, to destroy it. That's the only mitzvah you could do with idolatry. And then in the verse 26, in chapter 7, verse 26, it says, Lo tavi to'eva el betecha, that you should not bring an abomination into your home. And the Steipler Gaon, Rav Yaakov Kanievsky, alav shalom, and many of the poskim of that generation said that Lo tavi to'eva el betecha, don't bring an abomination to your house, is a television. Don't bring an abomination to your house, is a television. If you bring a television into your house where it's not just simply used as a screen to put, Torah lectures and kosher programming to educate yourself or your children, but rather you're going to put the news and sports and shows and movies and all types of gates to Gehenom, then you're bringing a abomination into your house, and it can be paskind in Shamayim the same way that it was paskind in this world as idol worship. And that's, Rabotai, one of the big things that we discussed last week, that all of these people that are feeling weakened as a result of the shows that they watch on TV or the movies they watched, and they feel less connection to Hashem, more emunah problems, more difficulties in their servitude of Hashem, it's their own fault. If you're continuing to watch TV, to watch movies, even if it's on a computer, if you're continuing to do all of those things, don't be surprised that your neshama is slowly but surely going to run away from Hashem. Why? Because you are constantly practicing something that the Chachamim called an abomination, and the Torah confirmed it. So here is one of the other things that it says. One of the other things that this parasha also talks about is that when a person has all of this toiva, all of this abomination in his life, they're going to have all types of ideological problems. They're not going to have the right understanding of who's the one that's giving them the blessings, the miracles, who's the one that freed Rudy, who's the one that gave you money to be able to live in a house, who's the one that gave you a baby, who's the one that gave you a wife or a husband. People think, no, he was freed because such and such made a phone call or wrote a letter. He got a wife because he is a good-looking guy. She got a husband because she's a really nice person. He got the job because he's really good at what he does. And people pin all types of natural things on the blessings that they get in their life. And unfortunately, this is the wrong ideology. This is the wrong ideology. Why? Say here in the parasha it says, "Ladat et asher bilvavecha tishmor mitzvotav imlo." So Hashem says He wants to know what's in He's constantly going to test you by knowing what's in your heart, and to see whether you're observing the Torah based on your belief in Hashem and knowledge of Hashem, or simply because you live in a Jewish community and you feel bad. But most importantly, ki lo al alechem levado yichya adam, ki al kol motza pi Adonai yichya adam. That a person needs to understand that he's not living. This is a pasuk number 3. Pasuk number 3. It's a long pasuk in chapter 8, where Kadosh Baruch Hu is telling us that you need to know one of the most important things that a person needs to have in their ideology is that all blessings, all good, all bad, all everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You were freed because Hashem decided you were freed. Not because somebody made a phone call, and not because somebody wrote a letter, and not because of an embassy, and not because of a babatach. Nothing. Because Hashem decided this is when you're going to be freed. You got money because Hashem decided that you're going to get money. You got married because Hashem decided you're going to get married. You got this because Hashem decided. This is how the world works. And a person that does not understand that has an ideological problem. Now, of course, each person needs to have some type of effort to do certain things, but just because you have effort doesn't mean you'll succeed. And also, just because you don't have effort doesn't mean you'll fail. We've seen that countless times throughout our lives. You know, many times you will try something and fail. Other times you won't try at all and succeed anyway. So it's important for a person to know that everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and nothing comes from your own actions. Even the land itself was not something that we were given because we were so righteous, because we did such great things. That's actually one of the things this parasha says. Well, first it tells us that he wants to make us know that it's not by bread alone does a man live, rather by everything that emanates from the mouth of God does man live. That's what the pasuk says in chapter 8, verse 3. And then he says to us, Ishamer lecha pen tishkach et Adonai Elohecha, that take care lest you forget Hashem, your God. Why would I forget God? He says, after I gave you all these different blessings, which I only covered a small portion of them, don't forget God. Why? Because that's what we tend to do. We tend to get blessings, we say Baruch Hashem, and 15 minutes later we forget about Hashem. We say Baruch Hashem, a week later we forget about Hashem. We say Baruch Hashem, 2 days later we're desecrating Hashem. Oh, I love Hashem so much, she tells me. Oh, I love Hashem so much, he tells me. Oh, Hashem is the best, Hashem is the best. Okay, so how come you're committing a moral crime? How come you're going with a married woman? How come you're going with a Jew even though you're not Jewish? How come you're going with stealing from your customers? How come you're doing all? You just said you love Hashem. How come you're going against Hashem? Oh, no, but I don't mean it that way, Rabbi. Oh, no, you don't need to explain yourself to me. You have to explain yourself to yourself. How could you, on one hand, one side of your lips saying that you love Hashem, but the other side is, I'm going to do whatever I want anyway. And that's unfortunately what happens a lot with people. It's like they find they're like an example that I gave you yesterday, which I heard from Rabbi Reuven, which I think is a spectacular example, as simplistic as it is they find their friend's wallet full of cash, and instead of returning the wallet, you know, saying, Baruch Hashem, I could do a mitzvah now by returning the wallet, they say, Baruch Hashem, Hashem sent me parnasah. Meaning they're stealing their friend's money, but they think that that's the blessing from Hashem. It's literally a ideological status of someone that's literally almost spiritually dead. It's almost spiritually dead. And unfortunately, this happens many times when people get blessings of all types. Initially, they thank Hashem, they even make a public statement of their gratitude of Hashem, and then they go back to sinning, they go back to going against Hashem on a regular basis, not thinking much of it, because they figure, listen, Hashem understands my weaknesses, as if that's okay. And that's actually the next part of the parasha that Moshe Rabbeinu tells us over here, that you have to know all of this Torah is not something that just came to be by itself. Obviously, we went through the desert. We went through hell and back. We went through Egypt. We went through a lot of different things. And you have to understand that this was one miracle after another. And this miracle was not just done for your parents. He tells them it was not just for you. It was done for everybody. You were gifted this not because you guys are so righteous, but rather because of the promise that Hashem made to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. To Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Because even though in the chapter 9, he talks about, he says, don't say in your heart that when Hashem pushes the goyim away from the land before you, saying that it's because of my righteousness that Hashem bring me to possess this land. And it's because of the wickedness of these nations that did Hashem drive them away. That we were righteous and they were wicked, and that's why Hashem gave us the land. Moshe Rabbeinu says to them, don't think that for a second. No, why? Because you are a stubborn nation. You didn't really deserve the land. Hashem gave it to you because He promised it to someone that did really deserve it. Your grandparents, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Now, for you, you got it because of them. For you to keep it, it's only because of your actions. If you are righteous, you'll keep it. If not, the land will vomit you out. Zachor al tishkach, remember and don't forget, meaning it's a double commandment here. Now, he says to them about all the different things that they did, how they went against Hashem, Mount Sinai, even after they got the Torah, worship an idol, he broke the Ten Commandments, and so on and so forth. And then he talks about how the land is being divided. It says, Al ken lo yeh lalevi chelek nachala im echav, Adonai hu nachalto. That therefore the Levi tribe doesn't have a share and a heritage in the land like the rest of the tribes, because Hashem is his heritage. Hashem is his heritage, meaning the Levi tribe does not get a piece of the land. So the Rambam in Mishneh Torah, the Rambam in Mishneh Torah Rambam Mishneh Torah in Ilchot Ayovel, Ilchot Shemitah in Ayovel, in chapter 13, it says, in the first halakha, it says, although the tribe of the Levi does not have an ancestral portion within Eretz Yisrael, the Jewish people were commanded to give them cities to dwell in, and additional residential property. So even though they weren't gifted an actual piece of land, the Rambam says that every one of the other tribes were commanded to give them pieces of their land. The cities include the 6 cities of refuge and 42 additional cities. When the cities of refuge will be added in the area of Mashiach, all will be given to the Levites. So here you see that the Levi tribe got an enormous amount of property, even though they weren't gifted something like the other tribes. They were still extremely well off and had a lot of things, and Hashem is their heritage. Now, we said earlier that the Torah that we got, Moshe says to us, the Torah that you got is not just for your parents, it's not just for you, it's for all your descendants. So what does it have to do with us? What does the Levi tribe getting a piece of the land have to do with us? Because we already know, number one, we don't know who all the tribes are today. The land is not divided up that way today. We have to wait until Mashiach comes, Be'ezrat Hashem. So what does it have to do with today? So here the Rambam says in Halakha, number 10 to 13, he says a few things. So the entire tribe of Levi are commanded against receiving an inheritance. I mean, they weren't even allowed to get an inheritance, even if they wanted to, or they wanted to negotiate something. Weren't allowed. They were commanded against receiving a share in the spoils of when the cities were conquered. And then in the Halakha number 12, in chapter 13, the Rambam says that why did the Levites not receive a portion in the inheritance of Eretz Yisrael and in the spoils of war like their brethren? Because they were set aside to serve God and minister unto Him and to instruct people at large in His just paths and righteous judgments. As it says in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 10, they will teach your judgments to Yaakov and your Torah to Israel. And therefore, they were set apart from the ways of the world. They do not wage war like the remainder of the Jewish people. They do not, nor do they receive an inheritance, nor do they acquire for themselves through their physical power. Instead, they are God's legion. God has blessed His legion, and He provides them. As the Torah says in the book of Numbers, chapter 18, verse 20, I am your portion and your inheritance. So here we see that the Levites have our nation within a nation, if you will. They have a special treatment. Hashem wants them to be the rabbis. Hashem wants them to be the scholars. Hashem wants them to be the leaders, the spiritual leaders of Am Yisrael. And He does not want them to spend any time whatsoever chasing big pieces of real estate and different pieces of land and negotiating in stock markets and all types of things. He doesn't want to do it. He wants them to be the spiritual leaders. And He says, just because you're going to be a rabbi doesn't mean you're going to be homeless. Just because you're going to be a Talmid Chacham doesn't mean you're not going to have food to eat. The opposite. Hashem will take care of you. Hashem will take care of you. Now, here we see that Hashem makes a very, very serious promise. Now, but this promise didn't start here. This promise actually already started the time of Yaakov Avinu. Originally, it was the firstborn sons. Firstborn sons were, in essence, the Levites at that time. They were the chosen ones. But then, when they sinned, Hashem gave that merit to the Levi tribe. But so we see one main thing that made the Levi tribe different is that throughout the whole time that we were in Egypt, the Levi tribes were the scholars, they were the spiritual leaders. And this answers the question that somebody asked, I think a week or two ago, and I don't think we got to that question, but I saw it in the thread. They asked if the Midrash and the Gemara says that Am Yisrael, when they were in Egypt, each birth were 6 babies. How come there's not 6 Moshe Rabbeinus? This actually answers that question. Why? Because the Torah says that the blessing of getting the 6 babies per birth was, in essence, not only to reproduce Am Yisrael, but also as a burden on the Egyptians. Like the more they hate us, the more they put burden on us, the more they enslaved us, the more they saw us reproduce to be even more and more people. Now, the only people that were not enslaved were Moshe and Aaron and the Levi tribe, the rest of the Levi tribe. Why? Because one of the things that happened at the time that that Yosef HaTzadik was the viceroy of Egypt is that he made a law, and you see this in the Torah. He made a law that there's a special, unique laws pertaining to the people of spirituality, to the religious leaders. This was a prophecy that he had to do this in order to protect Moshe Rabbeinu in the future, where Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron and all the Levites are not going to be slaves. That's why Moshe and Aaron were able to walk in and out of Egypt without anybody stopping them, because they weren't supposed to be slaves. It's not like, if technically, this is very simple to understand, because if everybody was supposed to be slaves in this one, so how would Aaron be excluded? Moshe used to be living in, you could explain by saying Moshe was part of the house of Paro when he grew up. But what about Aaron? Aaron was part of Am Yisrael. So how come Aaron was able to join him, go in and out? Because Am Yisrael was still slaves throughout that year. So how come he was able to go in and out? Because he was a Levi. And the Levites were not, they were the spiritual leaders, and therefore they were not serving as slaves. And therefore they did not get the blessing of having 6 children per birth. Meaning that, Aaron was born by himself. Miriam, born by herself. Moshe Rabbeinu, born by himself. They didn't get the blessing because they weren't slaves. So that's the explanation for that. But we see here that the Halakha says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the Levites to be special people that are not burdening themselves with the ways of the world as far as money and chasing real estate and so on. And He will take care of their parnasah. Now again, I still haven't answered the big question of what does this have to do with everybody of this generation, not just the Levi tribe of this generation, but everybody of this generation. You read the next halakha by the Rambam, and in halakha number 13, chapter 13, halakha number 13, not only the Levi tribe, but any of the inhabitants of the world whose spirit generously motivates him and he understands with his wisdom to set himself aside and to stand before God to serve Him and minister to Him, and to know God, proceeding justly as God made him, removing from his neck the yoke of the many reckonings which people seek. He is sanctified as holy of holies. God will be his portion and heritage forever, and will provide what is sufficient for him in this world, like He provides for the priests of the Levites. And thus King David declared in Psalm 16 verse 5, God is the lot of my portion, you are my cup, you support my lot. So here, the Rambam calls the scholars that dedicate their life to just learning Torah and not do anything else, where they're not looking to teach Torah for the sake of money. They're not looking to learn Torah for the sake of money. They're simply looking to do live the Torah life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without any exceptions. They are looking to simply serve Hashem because that is what Hashem wants. The Rambam calls them Kodesh Kodashim, Holy of Holies. And these are the people that will get whatever they need from Hashem. Whatever they need from Hashem. So this actually is to have such a blessing. He says you don't have to be from the Levi tribe. Anybody could do it. Anybody that wants to be an Avrech, anybody that wants to be a full-time Torah student can get this blessing. Now, of course, the blessing comes with tests. The blessing comes with the price. You don't just become considered holy of holies in the eyes of Hashem just because you don't feel like going to work all day and you want to watch videos. It doesn't work that way. Meaning, if a person really dedicates themselves 100% for the sake of heaven, to learn Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu will give them whatever they need. Will give them whatever they need, and how are they going to get whatever they need? Through different people. Hashem is going to use different messengers to help them. Whether it's a person that's going to donate to them, a person that's going to give to them, they're going to find something, they're going to inherit something. There's countless different ways that you get to see and meet different Talmidei Chachamim throughout your life, and you get to see how each and every single one of them is literally a walking miracle. And you see that some of these Avrechim, they're doing well. They own a house or an apartment in Yerushalayim or different places in Israel. That's fully paid off, no mortgage. They have, Baruch Hashem, a house full of children, everything that they need, and still the salary that they get from the kollel is still the same measly $500-600 that they get from the kollel. They get $100 from the government. They used to get $200, but people made a big deal out of it, so now they get $100. Like, what are you going to do with $100? That's what all the cry out that people have against the religious people milking the government. Oh, they're taking so much money from the government. What were they getting from the government? We're getting 800 shekels a month. That's it. The guy's learning, from morning to night every single day, and he gets 800 shekels a month. How much is 800 shekels a month? It's a little over $200. Now this Avigdor Imach Shimo V'Zichro lowered it to $100. Lowered it to 370 shekels, which is a little over $100. That's what an Avrech with a family of 8, 10 people, that's what he gets from the government, and people are, still up in arms about it. But if you're a terrorist, if you're a Palestinian terrorist, and you kill Jews, then the government gives you 3,000 shekels plus a month. Like, it actually pays to kill Jews in Israel. Because if you kill Jews in the name of the Palestinians, then you get a few thousand shekels a month. Your family gets a few thousand shekels a month while you're in jail, and so on. But if you're an Avrech, Tzaddik, learn Torah, Kodesh Kodashim, no. You, only 100 shekels, we don't even want you in this country. That's obviously the communist mentality that you have, unfortunately, in the secular government. Why is all of this happening, Rabotai? Because the next part of the parasha says, V'ata Yisrael, מה אדוני אלוהיך שואל מעמך, כי אם ליראה את אדוני אלוהיך, ללכת בכל דרכיו ולאהבה אותו, ולעבוד את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבביך, בכל נפשך, לשמור את מצוות אדוני ואת חוקותיו, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום, לטוב לך, הן לאדוני אלוהיך השמיים ושמי השמיים הארץ וכל אשר בה. Here, this particular verse it's if for anybody that has read the Chumash, they didn't need my help to tell them that the Manis Friedmans of the world that tell you that God needs you, or all of these Care Bear Erev Rav rabbis that tell you that you could do whatever you want, you don't need me for that. Why? You read this verse, you understand exactly why they're all heretics. All the people that say that Hashem needs you, or that you could do whatever you want, Hashem is going to forgive you no matter what you do, this particular verse destroys all of that. Why? If you understood the Hebrew, Ashrecha. If you didn't understand the Hebrew, we'll give you a translation. Chapter 10, in Parashat Ekev, Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 10, verse number 12 until 14, says, Now, O Israel, what does Hashem your God ask of you? only to fear Hashem your God, to go in all his ways, and to love him. Notice that the fear came first. And to serve Hashem your God with all your heart and with all your soul, to observe the commandments of Hashem and his decrees, which I commanded you today for your benefit. Notice he doesn't tell you you could do whatever you want. You want to show Hashem that you fear him. You want to show Hashem that you love him. You want to show Hashem that you're serving him. You have to fulfill the commandments. There's no such thing as I'm religious in my heart. I'm spiritually connected, but I don't keep Shabbat. There's no such thing. You have to fulfill the Torah as the Torah says. It says you have to observe the commandments of Hashem and his decrees. What's the commandments and the decrees? Why two things? You have the written Torah and the oral Torah. That I command you today for your benefit. This is all for your good. When you don't think it's for your good, there's something wrong. Behold, to Hashem your God are the heaven and the highest heaven, the earth and everything that is in it. This particular verse number 14 cancels out the Manis-Friedman ideology, which says that God needs you. Why? Here you have an outright verse where Hashem says outright. For anybody that doesn't understand, I'll explain it in simple English. I don't need you, nor do I need your mitzvot. Why? Hen la Adonai Elohecha hashamayim ushmei hashamayim. Everything is Hashem's. Everything is Hashem. You are Hashem's. You belong to Hashem. To Hashem your God are the heavens and the highest heaven, the earth and everything that's in it. Everything is his. He doesn't need you or your mitzvot or anything. Anyone that tells you otherwise is 100% an apikos. Is an apikos. But that's unfortunately one of the things that people don't understand, is that when you are going to go and teach Torah, you have to make sure that you're not just teaching Torah based on your own understanding. You have to learn Torah. You have to learn Torah from the sages of past, and you have to learn Torah from the Chachamim of today. And that's one of the things that one of the Gdolei Ador, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, in a letter that he wrote me, he says, he teaches, there's a Dvar Torah, of course, in it, that B'ezrat Hashem will publish it next week, Bli Neder, but he says the following. He gives a Limut Torah in this letter. He says, this is the path where light dwells. Meaning he's about Rav Yitzchak Yosef, one of the Gdolei Ador, the Rishon LeZion, and the chief Sephardic rabbi, says the following. This is the path where light dwells. That a person should acquire for himself a lot of Torah, pure fear of God, and be dedicated to the study of Musar and the correction of character traits. He must humbly consult with the sages of the Torah, not talking about just the sages of the past, but sages of today, which we'll emphasize in a moment again. He must consult with the sages of the Torah, this is called Shimush, and make sure that his hand does not move out of their hand. And only when his time coincides with knowledge does he set out to teach Torah to others. Meaning you can't just decide, just because you like to watch Shiurei Torah, you decide you're going to go teach Torah to people. You can't just decide because you read a few books, you're going to go teach people whatever you understand. It doesn't work that way. You have to have somebody make sure that your knowledge is correct. You have to make sure that somebody is your constant guide to tell you when you're wrong, when you're right, what which way to go, right or left. And that's one of the things that you see that's very common with people that go off completely, is that the one common denominator is that they don't have anybody that they report to. They don't have a rabbi. They don't have an authority figure in their life. They're their own boss. They're their own boss. And in the world of Torah, there is no such thing. If you want to be a kosher Jew, you want to be a kosher teacher, you want to be a kosher student, you have to have a rabbi. That's what the Mishnah in Avot is. The Mishnah says, Aseh lecharav, make yourself a rabbi. And not just say, no, I'll make myself a rabbi, Rambam is my rabbi. No, Habib. You can't just say the Rambam is a rabbi. You have to have a posek as a rabbi, someone that you're going by the halachot, which Am Yisrael goes by the Shulchan Aruch, and whatever the Shulchan Aruch did not cover, by Rabbi Yosef Karo and the Ramah, then we paskin based on the Rambam. That's generally how it goes. And of course, you have the modern day poskim that elaborate on things that are relevant to today that were not discussed in the Shulchan Aruch because of the technology and the advancements of things. But generally speaking, the blueprint of law for Am Yisrael is the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam. That's the main things. Of course, there are Rishonim, there's Gemara, there's Mishnah, there's a lot of different things. But nobody paskins, no one that's a kosher Jew, paskins based on the Mishnah or the Gemara or whatever they feel like it. No one does that. If someone does that, is considered a bull and an am haaretz and most likely a rasha. A bull is somebody who doesn't know anything, an ignoramus, and a wicked person. But that's unfortunately one of the things that people don't understand. You can't just pick and choose whoever you want to listen to. You can and decide what you're going to do. One young guy tells me, listen, I'm Sephardic, and a lot of things I hold by Rabbi Ovadia, but certain things I hold by somebody else, a different poskim that I have in my house. You can't just decide that, no, I'm going to hold by Rabbi Ovadia whenever I feel like it. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a rabbi. That's a posek, number one. Number two, you have to have a living rabbi. A living rabbi that's going to guide you. A living rabbi that you're going to ask questions. A living rabbi that you're going to listen to everything he says. That's what you have to have. Aseh lecharav. It's not a suggestion, it's an obligation. And unfortunately, many times you see these people that are perhaps well known on the internet, well known in their community, but they do things that are against the Masoret, against the Torah, against all the traditions and so on. Why? Because they are their own boss. They don't have any fear whatsoever, not of God, not of rabbis, not of anything. Why? Because they think that they're right. And that's one of the things what the Rishon LeZion here discusses. He says, not only do you have to consult humbly with the sages of the Torah, with Torah scholars, but you have to make sure that the hand does not move out of their hand. And only when his time coincides with knowledge does he set out to teach Torah to others. He doesn't just decide, no, Rabbi, I'm going to start giving a shiur every Tuesday to in my shul. Did your rabbi say it's okay? Oh, I didn't ask him. Oh, you just decided to just go give shiurim? That's it? You just decided? Yeah. What's the big deal? Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that Kiruv? Yeah, it could be if you know what you're doing, and but what if you don't know? What if you're wrong? No, all I'm doing is I'm just learning Gemara with them. But who says that you're understanding the Gemara the right way? Who says that you understand the Musar the right way? You have to know that you have to be very, very careful. Why? Because people's lives are at risk. But that's why Moshe Rabbeinu starts with, what is Hashem really asking of you but to fear Hashem? It all starts with fear of Hashem. That's what the Mishnah in Avot says. A person that is his fear is the priority in his life, his wisdom will be fulfilled. But as a person that considers his wisdom the priority is and has no fear, his wisdom will not be fulfilled. So then the Rishon LeZion, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, continues, and he says, then his heart can be confident that a mishap is certainly not going to come about through him. So when a person has a rabbi that he listens to, and even rabbis that he listens to about different specific things, and people that are not just his friends, people that have no bias whatsoever, no agenda, no anything else. They're simply people that have da'at Torah. A person that listens to that, you know that you're going to go in the right direction, you have nothing to fear. And then the Rishon LeZion says this, which was shocking to see this, they write this in a letter to me. He included something very extraordinary. He says, contrary to what happens in our generation, an orphan generation with people who have not yet read and reviewed their own studies properly, and especially did not serve Torah scholars sufficiently, yet they go out to lead congregations publicly and step on the heads of the holy nation. He says, look at what happened to this orphan generation that has no one to report to. They don't want to report to any rabbi. Even if the rabbi is the biggest chacham in the world, they still don't want to listen to him. So what happens with this orphan generation? They have themselves, the rabbis themselves of this generation many times themselves haven't studied enough, don't have enough knowledge, but they go and they not only start communities on their own and lead congregations on their own without any worry whatsoever, but on top of it, they arrogantly step on the leaders of the generation while they're in the process. Not stepping on the leaders by taking people's jobs, but stepping on the leaders by saying, no, nobody knows anything except me. And he says, worst of all is that they arrogantly say, I will reign. Every one of them thinks they're the biggest chacham. There's this one idiot in New York, I forget his name, Shem Rashaim Yirkav anyway. He decided that he's a Nazir. He's a Nazir. There's no Nazirim anymore, but he decided he's a Nazir. He's a Nazarite. And because he's a Nazarite, he doesn't have to put on tefillin anymore. Doesn't put on tefillin. He tells his community in New York not to put on tefillin anymore. This is, the Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah says, a Jew that does not put on tefillin is one of the people that goes to Gehenom and never comes out. But this Rasha Merusha says, no, I'm a Nazir. You don't need to put on tefillin if you're a Nazir. Complete stupidity. Now, it didn't start that way. He originally started by being one of these people that goes against the Zohar and goes against everything that he doesn't agree with. He has nobody to report to. He has no rabbi. He's his own rabbi. He's his own God. He's his own everything. But he pretends to be a Jew. And this is unfortunately one of the things that happens in many places. And the people are unfortunately not knowledgeable enough or strong spiritually enough to really call him out and throw him in the garbage where he belongs. Or the people like him, like this Rasha Dweck from UK. Instead of firing this guy and throwing him into a sewer, what do? They pay him $1.5 million a year to be the rabbi in the congregation over there in England. It's the most moronic thing in the world. You pay a guy that was thrown out of New York because he's a heretic, thrown out of his own Syrian community in New York because he's a heretic, but you give him a job and pay him $1.5 million a year to what? To read you Fiddler on the Roof and 50 Shades of Grey and all types of heretical books. His first book that he recommended in the book club is a book that an atheist wrote. I mean, a rabbi. Like if an atheist organization is recommending an atheist book, okay, good, he's doing his job. But a rabbi is recommending a book that was written by a famous atheist? Like, this is unfortunately what happened. Today when you have people treat the synagogue, treat the Bet Midrash like a social club, they don't have the intellectual wherewithal or the spiritual wherewithal to even know who the right rabbi is. And the rabbis themselves, unfortunately, as the Rishon LeZion himself is saying many times, not all the time, of course, there's many good rabbis, but many times you'll find that these Manis Friedmans of the world and Mezas of the world and Dwecks and all these other people, they were not something that just appeared in the world. They've always been bad, they've always been off for a long period of time, and they've just gotten worse over time, and the damage continues to grow. And instead of recognizing the fact that they're, not doing what the Torah says, instead they mock it. They make fun of it, they step on more Torah leaders, they make fun of more Torah scholars. And that's in essence what the Rishon LeZion is saying here, is that each one is arrogantly saying, I will reign. And moreover, he writes, they publicly disagree with the Torah scholars whose smallest finger is thicker than their waist. There are some who even dare to disagree with extreme arrogance against the Gedolei Ador, the greatest rabbis of the generation, who when they rise, even lions are frightened, both in matters of halacha and matters of hashkafa. May the good God forgive them. He says here, some of these people are so arrogant that they start a community even if they don't even have enough knowledge themselves. He says some are even worse. Some are even saying, no, I'm the Gedolei Ador. I disagree with the biggest, the rabbi of the city. He said some are so horrible they do it publicly, like Meza. They go against the biggest rabbis in the world. Not just the rabbis of this generation, but they'll go against the Gemara rabbis, no, they're just Amoraim. Oh, he's just a Rishon. The Rambam, he's just a Rishon. It's just a Midrash. They treat them like they're commoners in a supermarket. He says these people have no idea what they're dealing with, but instead of recognizing their weaknesses, they actually they tell people that their weaknesses are their strengths, and they literally disagree with the Gedolei Ador of all the generations publicly. Like, if your foolish and arrogance was at least inside you, inside your own house, and only your wife had to suffer, okay, listen, at least the damage is contained. But unfortunately, these people are so foolish and so arrogant that they publicize their stupidity. Like the world would have never known how stupid they are if they wouldn't have opened their mouth. But unfortunately, because people do not learn enough Torah, and they compare the speakers they listen to every other speaker out there, the self-help gurus and the coaches and the businessman speakers, they compared the rabbis to them also based on simply whether they connect to their voice and their speech pattern, and that's how they determine who they're going to listen to for spiritual advice in accordance to the Torah. And unfortunately, this is the weakness of many, many communities. This is the weakness of many, many people around the world, is that they don't have enough knowledge to even know what they don't know and how to make the right choices. Hence the reason why the Rishon LeZion is saying here is that it's important for each and every single one of us to know. You have to have fear of the Almighty if you're going to be a kosher Jew. Whether you're male or female, doesn't matter. You have to have fear of the Almighty. Where does he get it from? He gets it from this week's parasha, as one of the countless places in the Torah it talks about fear of Hashem. What does Hashem want from you? Fear of Hashem. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat uses this verse from this week's parashat Ekev. It says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world only for you to fear Him. That's it. That's it. Only for you to fear Him. What's one of the proofs? One of the proofs is the Re'emim. Gemara Masechet Bachot says the Re'emim, the thunder. Thunder. What does thunder do? What does thunder do? You say, oh, thunder makes noise. Okay, thunder makes noise. Thank you very much for telling us the thunder makes noise. But what does it do in the world? Like Hashem obviously created the thunder, created lightning, created wind, created the water, created air, created you, me, created everything. Obviously, He has infinite wisdom. He didn't create anything with no wisdom. He created everything with wisdom. That's why it says, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz. Hashem created the world with wisdom. Bereshit, the Ramban says, is bechokhmah, the wisdom. So Hashem created everything with wisdom, meaning that everything has a purpose. What is the purpose of thunder? Tell me, what's the purpose of thunder? You don't need to be a scientist or a genius. Tell me the purpose of thunder. What does it do in the world? It makes noise. Great, thank you very much for making noise. Tell me something else that it does in the world. Why would Hashem create thunder? It doesn't create any energy. No one eats it. No one drinks it. No one breathes it. No one can see it. What is the point of thunder? You know what the point of thunder is? To scare you. That's the only point of thunder. That is the ultimate and only point of why HaKadosh Baruch Hu created thunder. For you to be scared. Why would Hashem want you to be scared? Because that's how you will be able to serve Him. If you hear thunder where it literally sounds like Hashem is breaking the world, it makes you think of Hashem. It makes you think of Hashem. It makes you think, maybe, you know what, I got to do tshuva. So we see here that the notion that fear of the Almighty is not a good way to serve God is literally antithetical to the Torah, because it is the main way to serve God. It is the ultimate way to serve God. It is the only way to serve God. And only after you fear Him will you be able to even love Him. But before you fear Him, you don't even know what love is. And that's one of the things that we could learn from Parashat Ekev, as one of the many, many other things, Be'ezrat Hashem.
אני מברך את הרבנים, רגע. אני מברך את הרבנים, הרב ירון ראובן, הרב אפרים כחלון, ראשי ארגון בעזרת השם, שהלכו בפי עליון, שעלו מעלה, יהיה להם ברכה והצלחה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא בישועות ליבם לטובה ולברכה, שבכל מה שיפנו ישכילו ויצליחו, יזכו לעשות כאלה וכאלה, הודיעו תורה לאדירה, אמן ואמן.
בעזרת השם רשת בכל הארץ. הוא היהודי הזה, הוא היה מיליונר, סגר את כל הביזנס, אמר אני משקיע פה בעולמה של תורה.
איפה הוא גר?
בפלורידה.
פלורידה. איפה זה פלורידה? באמריקה.
במיימי. כן, ליד. אנחנו שם עכשיו הולכים להקים קהילה ספרדית.
חזק אותו בשמי.
קהילה ספרדית גדולה.
תעביר לו מה שבירכתי אותו.
כן, קהילה ספרדית גדולה.
כן.